is ASM Artist Hawaii, and today I thought I would do a little video for you. I know I haven't done one in a while. I've been very busy with work. I'm basically the only employee left at my shop because people have either quit or had emergencies in their family. So I've been doing a lot of extra hours that I didn't count on. And also I have a lot of art projects that I've been working on for Christmas because I've decided that I'm going to give paintings to different members of my family, but naturally I have to have the paintings correspond to each of their personalities, and it's a lot more work than I thought it would be. So I've been very busy lately, but I would love to do a little video for you. And I was watching WhispersUnicorn, I think is her name. I only just started following her, but I love her voice and I love her cute little face. And she did a video where she was role-playing as a librarian and was going through some different books. A lot of those were books that I loved myself, and I get very excited about talking to people about books and recommending books to people. So I thought that I would just go through some of my favorite books today, and if there's something that you would like to read, if you've been looking for something interesting and different to read, then you might like this because there are a lot of beautiful books and hilarious books that I am very fond of. So I thought I would start with this one here, Carter Beats the Devil by Glenn David Gould. Carter Beats the Devil is probably my favorite book in the world. I haven't read it as many times as I have read To Pride and Prejudice or Cyrano de Bergerac or other books like that, but it is a wonderful book. It is probably the best written book I have ever read. It's about Charles Carter, the magician, and it's what Glenn David Gould likes to do with his books is have it be part fiction and part reality. So he was actually a magician during this time. He was a stage magician. And many of the other magicians mentioned in this book are real people, and many of these events did happen. But it also follows a particular storyline that is fiction, and it ties in with the disappearance of President Warren G. Harding, and it ties in with the invention of television. I don't know really how to talk about this book to really convey how amazing it is. The writing in it on a technical level is perfect. I think it's engaging and well done and funny and fascinating. But the storytelling in response to the writing is just so beautiful, and it keeps you so interested, and all you want to do is just get to the next page, get to the next chapter, and learn what everyone is going to be going through. And there are some mysteries within the book that you yourself have to find. There's this wine label, and you have to figure out what it really means. It just looks like a pretty design, but you have to look at the book in a different way to read the words, because there are words in there. It's so exciting. I love this book. I would recommend it to anybody. next book that I'm recommending is a very creepy book, and I think it's very appropriate for right now because a lot of crazy people are thinking that the world is going to end pretty soon. So, World War Z. I'm going to be a hipster and say that I read this before it was cool. I actually, the first time I started reading this book, there was a huge blackout across the island of Hawaii, and there was a big thunderstorm. So it was pouring rain, lightning, thunder, and all the lights were out. And my sister lit some candles, and she read aloud to me the first chapter of World War Z. Oh, it's so frightening. It is perfectly written. I especially want to recommend this book if you have heard of the movie and you're thinking of seeing it, because from what I have seen so far of previews of the movie and descriptions of the movie, it's not going to be like this book. I don't know why they're calling it World War Z, because it's not going to be like this. This book, it's, an oral history of the zombie war, written by Max Brooks, who is actually the son of Mel Brooks, the awesome movie director. But this book is written as if it is nonfiction. It's written as if it is a real documentation of interviews with different survivors of the zombie war. So it's written as if the zombie war has already happened and we are in the stages of recovering from it. And these are, like any historical war documentation, these are different interviews with survivors of the zombie war. It manages to be engaging and terrifying and heartbreaking and motivating without actually having a central character or a love story like most fiction books have to have. And I think that they changed all that for the movie. My impression is that Brad Pitt is supposed to be this general who saves his family, and basically like any zombie movie, this is not a normal zombie story. And I really recommend that you read this because it is fascinating and very scary. So, the next recommendation is actually by one of my favorite authors of all time. I'm not usually the type of person that likes to follow different authors through everything they do. Usually I will not go through somebody's entire catalog and read everything they've done unless it's very special. Christopher Moore is very special to me. He is a comedic writer. He's hilarious, but he does really spooky, supernatural type of stories. They are intelligently written, but they're also hilarious. And, he blends Dave Barry style comedy and Carl Hiaasen style adventure with like Neil Gaiman style supernatural fantasy, Stephen King. He's wonderful. So everything he has ever written, I think, is fantastic. Some are better than others, but he has a great style. And this particular book, A Dirty Job, is, I think, one of his very best. This book follows Charlie Asher, who is just a guy who just had a baby. Well, his wife just had a baby. But then his wife passes away. And he finds out that he has been given the job of Grim Reaper. And so he has to deal with single fatherhood which is hard enough. And he has to deal with being a Grim Reaper at the same time, which is very weird. But there are other monsters involved who want to capture the kind of power that he has, and it turns into a great, big, dirty, wonderful mess. So this is a fantastic book. It's good for a laugh, but it's good for an escape too. I mean, if you really want to dive into a novel and really invest yourself in these characters, this is going to do it for you. And everything this man has written is going to do it for you. Most of his books are ridiculous in the best way, and I can't recommend him highly enough. This next book, it's beautiful, and I would recommend this book to anybody who wants to get their heart broken, because it's gorgeous. And I'm not a fan of sad endings. I'm shallow in that way. I don't at all like to feel like junk by the end of a book or a movie. And usually I will have to find out ahead of time if a book or if a movie has a junky ending, or I won't read it. I know, that's very shallow. But this book does not have a sad ending, really. It's basically just about growth and change, and it's also about stories. This is called Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress by Dai Serge. He's a Chinese novelist, and many Chinese writers, especially when it's translated into English. Not that I'm able to read it in any other way. Many of them, their style is a little depressing to me, and is a little too tightly focused on the lumps and bruises of humanity. I don't really know how to put it in a proper way, but in general, Chinese novelists kind of put me off a little bit, and I've had some bad experiences with books. But Dai Serge is a beautiful writer, and this book, first of all, I love stories about stories. I love stories about how writing can change the world, because it does. It does every day. I mean, the first time I read The Hobbit, my life changed. And when I read The Catcher in the Rye, my life changed. My writing, I started writing, and I never had done that before. And what Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress is about is the events of the Cultural Revolution in China, when Chairman Mao was basically weeding out anybody that he thought was intellectual, and he put them in these re-education camps, where basically anybody who he thought was too big for their britches, children of doctors or lawyers or anything like that, they had to go to these re-education camps, and they had to work in the dirt and the mud. They had to work with the farmers and slaughter animals and things like that. And basically his idea was that this would teach them the value of hard work. But it was obviously a messed up concept, because all of these different people worked hard, just in different ways. This story follows two boys who were sent together to one of these re-education camps, and they meet a girl there who is a seamstress, and both of them fall in love with her, and in a way she falls in love with both of them, but in different ways, of course. And together they discover a box of forbidden books. And Chairman Mao banned all sorts of books, but mainly any European books, any books that he thought might encourage the bourgeois way of thinking. And they find some incredible writing, and it changes their lives. It changes the way that they feel and think about themselves and about each other. It's wonderful. So I would definitely recommend this book, but it's a bit heavy. It's something that your heart goes into it, and it stays with you afterward. So it's something that I wouldn't just read it for a good time, for a laugh, not like Dirty Job. This is something that you read when you really want to put your heart into something. This next one is very fun. This is a book that I reread every time something terrible happens to me. And I don't mean terrible like terrible, but something unjust. When I got fired from my job for something that I did not do, if I ever should get in trouble for something and it's completely unfair, and I want to break something or beat somebody up, this is the book that I always run to. This is Sick Puppy by Carl Hiaasen, and it is incredible. Carl Hiaasen is a writer out of Florida, and he writes exclusively about Florida and about Florida crime. And his fiction is so hilariously wonderful. He creates, in every one of his books, he creates fantastic protagonists, people that you sympathize with, people that you want to win, people who want to do good. And generally these are people who care very much about the environment, which is an issue in Florida, and are trying to save the little guys. And the villains are also equally fantastic. They are always so delightfully evil, so horrible and hilarious, and there's a lot of raunchy stuff in these books, which I love. So a prominent politician, for example, who has 2 Russian mail-order brides that he is surgically altering to make them look like Barbie dolls. That's a character in this book, and he's terrible, and he's rotten, and he gets exactly what he deserves. And that is what Sick Puppy is all about. And most of Carl Hiaasen's novels, they follow a similar pattern. He is, of course, a serial crime novelist, so it's not as if every one of his books is going to be different. But they do have different characters. They do have different insane, twisting plot lines. You find yourself reading in the middle of the book and thinking, how did we get here? This is unreal. This is insane. And it's hilarious and wonderful. But the best part, I think, about Carl Hiaasen's books is that everybody gets exactly what they need. Everybody gets exactly what's coming to them. The heroes, they make it. The people that you're fighting for in the entire book, they make it, and they're okay, and they get exactly what they deserve. And the villains, the rotten, evil, horrible villains, they get exactly what they deserve too. And it's always ironically just and poetic. So that is something that really draws me to Carl Hiaasen's books, because he just does a wonderful job of creating these insane situations and giving everybody their just desserts. So, Sick Puppy, very good read. I realized that my list is very fiction heavy. I'm a big fiction reader, but I have here some nonfiction that I really think will appeal to people who usually don't go for nonfiction. The first one that comes to mind is this one. This is Napoleon's Privates. And Napoleon's Privates is another really funny book, but it's all full of facts and fallacies about different historical figures. And boy, if everybody read this, I think it would be a real laugh. I mean, it covers things like Napoleon's penis size. It covers things like whether or not champagne glasses were actually modeled off of Marie Antoinette's breasts. It covers things like, oh, I don't know, whether or not Cleopatra was pretty, because a lot of people have said that she was the greatest beauty of Egypt, and a lot of people have said that she looked a little rough, which I think is all about attitude anyway, but that's, that's okay. But it's different real histories, and it tells you the gossip, basically, that everybody really wants to know about these famous people and these famous periods of time. It just gives you really good gossip, and it's absolutely something that you can spring out into conversation, like, hey, I know what was the kinkiest sex club in 18th century Britain. Great book. Very, very good book. Next. Boy, I'm just bringing out my raunchiest material today. I have The Sex Lives of Cannibals by J. Martin Truce. Okay, sorry about that. My telephone rang. So, right side up. The Sex Lives of Cannibals is about J. Martin Truce's basically picking up his life and moving to a tiny little island in the equatorial Pacific. This is an island called Kiribati. And a lot of people have never heard of Kiribati, including myself before I read this book, because it's indescribably small. And so he talks about what it was like to live there. Basically, his girlfriend got a job working with the Republic of Kiribati, and he decided to leave with her because his plan was to be a writer and write this great novel, which he was going to have plenty of time to do on a mostly deserted island. And mostly he just wrote about how insane life was on this deserted island. It was very interesting for me to read, of course, living here in Hawaii, because there are some parallels, but not a lot, because mostly this is a very small, undeveloped island. You have to buy water to put in a reservoir if you want to ever have any water in your house, because basically it never rains there. You have to boil everything. The situation with the dogs on the island is unreal. And also the music situation, because they basically only, according to him, listen to La Macarena over and over. So it's torturous to read, because of course his experiences aren't always good ones, but it's brilliant. He's a very funny writer, and he just makes it very interesting. He has a sequel to this one called Getting Stoned with Savages, which is also very good, and that is about life on Fiji and Vanuatu. And interestingly enough, Vanuatu was the last recorded location where there was cannibalism, and that was not very long ago. That was only in the 60s. So there are people still alive in Vanuatu who have practiced cannibalism and possibly still do. But anyway, it's a very good book. And then, of course, reading something like this on public transportation, that might turn a couple of heads, but don't let that stop you. It's wonderful. Okay, and my last book for the day, Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain has actually gotten a big name for himself recently because he has a show called No Reservations, which is on the Travel Channel. Unfortunately, it's ending now, which is very sad. But I actually read this years and years before he started doing that. This was his first. It wasn't his first piece of writing. He did some novels before this, but they weren't very good. I think he was trying to be Carl Hiaasen. It wasn't his strong suit. But Kitchen Confidential is a fantastic book. And what I like is that after this, you really see him grow. Because in this book, he's a little brash and arrogant, and he's very foul-mouthed, and he's a little bit angry at the world. But he talks about what it's like to be a chef and what he had to go through in order to be a chef. And this is at 4-star dining, so he has to run one of the most popular kitchens in New York. And he talks about how a kitchen at a place like this, it's like a pirate ship. There are dozens of languages being shouted at all times. People are vulgar, nasty, tattooed up, usually on some form of drugs. But it's still a fantastic world, and he talks about what that's like. He talks about food in ways that I'd never heard someone talk about food before. He makes it into a real experience, and he makes you think a little bit differently about it, and also gives sort of different tips about being in a restaurant, and what to expect and what's in the background, and what you should look out for. I recommend this one because it's his first book on the subject, and it should absolutely be read. And my sister and I both have actually given copies of this away to a lot of different people because it's just wonderful, and everybody should read it. But I also highly recommend Nasty Bits, which came after this one, and also A Cook's Tour and No Reservations, the book, which came after this one, which I think are more mature books, not mature in the dirty, sexy sense, but mature in terms of him, in terms of how he looked at the world, in terms of his writing style and his point of view, because doing the show that he did allowed him to travel a lot, and his point of view on the world is it's just fantastic. It's something that, I could listen to him talk for days on end about anything at all. He makes me hungry. He makes me sad. Yeah, he makes me incredibly happy. He makes me laugh until I have tears in my eyes. He makes me wish that I was a friend of his, that I could just have him over and make macaroni and cheese and just talk about food and talk about traveling. And he makes you intimate with him. He makes you familiar with him, and he makes you eager to explore, whether it's just exploring your own city, which he inspired me to do, or exploring food that you've never tried, or exploring the world, getting out and seeing what the world actually has in it. So this one is a very good book, and should absolutely be looked up. So, those are my books. These were just a few of the many that I would recommend to anybody who allows me to talk about such a subject, because I will go on for hours and hours about these books. But hopefully you liked the video. Hopefully it was a little bit relaxing for you. And if you did like it, then go ahead and leave me a like or a little comment right there. And click the subscribe button if you want to. I have more videos to come, and hopefully I will be getting to some of those requests. I want you to have a good evening, and hopefully I will be recording another video before the holidays, but if not, happy Christmas, happy Hanukkah, and happy Kwanzaa to everybody, and happy Yuletide festivity event.